Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Perdue.
Hey, come on in. It's time for us to get some motivation, some inspiration, something that we can grab hold of. And when our next trials and tribulation come, we can get through the other side. And again, like I always say, share it, give it away. Don't hold it and take it with you. Pay it forward. Help the next person ahead of you in case they're going through something. Maybe they can use what you've learned to get through the next trial, tribulation, challenge, hardship, difficulty, however you want to put it. All right, today on our podcast, this is going to be interesting. This I remember reading the Viktor Frankl, A Man's Meaning, In Search of Meaning. So for that. So he's going to be, the guy today is going to be talking about other people's journey through those bad times back in the regime, all that. I don't want to get into the thing, but he's written a book and stuff, and he's going to tell us about all this that he's learned. It's going to be interesting. Let's get him on here. Welcome to the show. Let me push his button here. John J. Thank you, sir. Come on into the show here now.
Hello.
I was just rambling on. I didn't want to give everything away. This is very interesting about what happened, in the 30s and 40s, and we definitely need to remind people so we don't ever have anything like this ever again.
So, my book is a factual book about a Jewish teenager in the Second World War. It's a story of survival, and it's a story of loss. It's a story of resilience, and it fascinated me. I met Ninette, whose name is in the title of the book, when she was in her 80s. And the first thing she said to me was, "I'm a survivor." And I thought that was a fascinating expression. And she had led a very privileged adult life, and she'd led also quite a privileged childhood. But during the Second World War, she was one misstep away from being arrested and deported to Auschwitz, and most likely either gassed or worked to death.
Wow. Just to me, whenever I think back about those days, again, I was nowhere near involved in anything like that, but just how the people survived all that, and then just by chance they go or don't go to the gas chambers or medical research, whatever they're doing, and it's basically by chance.
It's about chance, but it's also about preparation and your own resources, and that was very important. She had in her father a man who was able to organize the things that kept his immediate family safe. They had to have false papers at one point. They had to go into hiding in the Pyrenees, and they needed connections to help them get over the Pyrenees to safety in Spain. But all around them, uncles, aunts, cousins were not so fortunate. And Ninette, to the end of her days, mourned the loss of particular adored relatives who ended up in the gas chambers.
Yeah, there's saw it last night. First time I've seen it advertised. I think it starts next week, late next week. And I don't remember the name, but it looks like it's going back to the Holocaust. And this guy here looks like he's making fake IDs and stuff while he's locked up to try to smuggle people out. That's what it looks like to me. I have to read up more on the story and the name, but I just caught it briefly last night.
Yes.
So looks like it comes out next week.
The great danger for democratic and liberal societies, and when I use the word liberal, I mean in the English sense, not necessarily in the politically charged American sense.
Mm-hmm.
The great dangers are when hate speech turns into hate actions and hate violence.
Mm.
That is one of the great problems. And if one studies a little of French history, you discover that there was an awful lot of hatred, racist hatred of Jews in France before the Second World War. And that once the Marshal Pétain had signed an armistice with the Germans and had offered to collaborate with them, hate speech and hate thought from the 1920s and 30s turned into hate action. And the very people who had been the anti-Semitic racist politicians in France before the war became the administrators who impoverished people and held them in captivity and ultimately handed them over to the Germans, who then to Nazi Germans, who then deported them. And so it's a terrible lesson about how people conditioned to other people then in particular circumstances will turn speech and thoughts into action.
There's a quick question here about your writing your book. You met, how'd you say her name? Ninette. Met her, and then all of a sudden you're going, man, this needs to be a book. And then, is this your first book you ever written? Have you prepared yourself into, written something smaller? Because it looks like a good sized book. And I'm just wondering, all of a sudden it just, something hits you and says, man, this has got to be put out there.
Well, I had previously written a book about my late father, who had been a British volunteer soldier in the Second World War and was captured by the Germans in 1940. So spent 5 years in various prisoner of war camps, escaping, being recaptured. He was perseverance from central casting. He escaped 5 times, was recaptured 4 times. The last time, the SS and Gestapo made him dig his own grave, and then told him to fill it in again, and then shipped him back to the camp. But it was a fascinating story, also of survival and resistance. And I met Ninette at a charity luncheon to raise money, actually, to help synagogues and schools and Jewish cultural institutions stay safe from anti-Semitic attack and cemeteries being desecrated, etc. And she had been one of the early fundraisers for this organization in England. And there she was in her 80s, looking immaculate, beautifully groomed, beautifully dressed. And I had been talking to her about the book that I was writing at the time about my father. And she describes here how she, as a teenager, was crawling through the mud of the Pyrenees on her hands and knees. And deliberately, you went over the Pyrenees to safety on a wet and muddy night, because then the border guards, the German border guards, and their dogs would be less likely to catch you, because the dogs would not necessarily pick up your scent. And Ninette described to me at one point lying in a ditch and feeling the breath of a guard dog on her. Now that may be a slight elaboration of what actually happened, but nevertheless, that tells you how close she was to extermination. Ultimately, it would have been extermination.
Yeah.
And I thought, what an extraordinary contrast. Here is this woman, she married an English lord, so she ended her life as her title was Lady Swathling. Here she was, the Dowager Lady Swathling, telling me of this extraordinary story. And I thought, I've got to write this down. I then benefited because from her, she gave me her teenage diaries. Now, for the avoidance of doubt.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Frank, but she was younger than Anne Frank, but it was very powerful contemporaneous evidence of how Ninette felt or what she did at any given point in the war, including sentences in code where there was sensitive material that she was discussing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, this is another great start. And then I did an awful lot of research, reading secondary sources, primary sources, interviewing other elderly people that had been in the war, women and men, and spent a lot of time in archives in France and in England, putting the story together.
That was just, to me, I mean, holding those diaries and her trusting you enough to give them to you. Wow. That's just, I mean, just, and now you're reading it firsthand what's going on right during that time. And it's not reading a third copy, generation from a book. You're getting it right. Oh man, that had to be powerful.
I used to have goosebumps
I
reading,
can imagine.
and it had been given to her as when she was 11 years old. And the very first entry, is for the 3rd of September 1939. In other words, she's listening to the radio. Today they announced that Britain was at war with Germany. It's sort of virtually the very first line. And then France declared war. So it's extraordinary that the first page of her diary marks the start of the Second World War.
So when she gave them to you, because those journals, what, 60, 70 years old?
Well, I phoned her up and I said to her, having met her at this dinner, I said, Ninette, I really want to tell your story.
Yeah.
So I came and spent many a long Monday afternoon after work with her, getting her to tell me everything she remembered about the war. And we would use the diaries as a prop to stimulate her memory.
Yeah.
And we would also use other documents. When I went to the French version of the National Archives, I found material about her family that she didn't know herself, that the police had investigated her father for supposed resistance activities and black marketeering. And there it was, this document on file. And she was unaware of this. So I was able to learn.
Yeah, that would be, for her to get that documentation, like you said, had no idea. Had to have been just mind-blowing for her as well.
That's right. But also, as an 80 and right up until she died, we would have these conversations. It's very good for elderly people to talk about these things. It's good for their brains. It's very healthy to have that kind of communication. And so I would also help her we'd go through history books together. We'd translate things together. So I felt as I researched the book that I was giving to her as well as receiving from her. And for her, as an early teenager in the war, teenagers think they're invincible.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
oh, yes.
Just think of you. You felt in that, was it an American football game?
Yes.
You felt invincible, and you learned you weren't invincible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ninette as a teenager felt she was invincible. And so her experiences in the Second World War were part adventure story as well as horror story. Both things were combined. Her older sister, who became a distinguished French writer, was more sentient and more, for her, she understood more fully what was going on and the dangers involved. But for Ninette, it was, as I say, it was part adventure story. Reality hit her straight in the face at one point, where she left her real papers, her real ID papers, on the counter of a pharmacy in Pau, in the Pyrenees.
Mm-hmm.
And she realized that she'd left them behind, not her false papers, but her real papers, which she'd held on to. And she had a sleepless night. And the following morning, before the shop even opened, she turned up at the shop, waited for the pharmacist to arrive. And he said to her, "You are very lucky, young lady. You are very lucky indeed, because I could have been a collaborationist. I could have been an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm.
I could have handed these papers straight to the police and you would have been arrested. You are very fortunate indeed that I am who I am." So,
wow. And then that's what you call a tough lesson to learn. But yeah, wow. I got a friend, his name Bird. Hey, Bird, if you're listening later on, that his dad told him, well, I think he's passed away, but his dad told him that there's no such thing as coincidence. That's God being anonymous. So, that's where people would say she left the papers, but with someone that God knew would protect the papers. Like you said, not handing it over. So if that's just things that worked out right. It's supposed to be that way.
and she recognized that she had something to give back as well for the people. They're called in Judaism, and particularly in Israel, they're called righteous Gentiles. And these are people more regularly Protestants, but also the Protestants were first in terms of Jewish rescue in France. Then came more Catholics. And Ninette recognized the importance of these people. And so after the war, the Holocaust Memorial in Israel, it's called Yad Vashem, created this category of righteous Gentile. And these are the people, and you'll find tens of thousands of them listed in Yad Vashem, of Gentiles who helped Jews to survive. And Ninette organized for the couple in husband and wife team in Pau that hid her and her family for nearly 6 months. She arranged for them to be declared righteous Gentiles. And the other person she organized to be declared righteous Gentiles was the cook of her uncle's family, a woman called Marie Conti. And Marie Conti had looked after Ninette's cousin Manon. She had been less lucky, and her father, because they were hiding not in the Pyrenees but in the Alps, and they were denounced. And her uncle was arrested and deported and never to return. But Manon managed to escape, and the family cook hid her for weeks in a pigsty and organized for local farmers to give the two of them food and eau de vie and brandy to keep them warm.
Yeah. And
then led Manon, who was in an incredibly traumatized state, having watched her father being arrested, led her to the Pyrenees from the Alps, led her to the home, the remote manor where Ninette and her family were hiding, so that Manon could also go over the Pyrenees to safety in Spain at the same time. So there were these extraordinary characters. And make no mistake, if you as a Christian were caught hiding Jews or helping them escape over the Pyrenees, you potentially could be killed. Indeed, there was a pair of smugglers who helped the family of a friend of Ninette over the Pyrenees to safety in Spain. And on a subsequent mission to take Jews to safety, they were caught and sent to a concentration camp and worked to death. So this was a risky business, but there were people enough to look after other people.
Oh yeah, I believe you that if Christian or not, if you're hiding, the Jewish people, your life is in danger. I could see, and these people knew that. They knew what they're doing. That could end up not being a good payoff, and for them, to take that risk and know their beliefs, their faith, and know what's right and wrong, doing the right thing, and to jeopardize what could have been, and knowing that's some good people there.
Very much so. And France was an odd situation because on the one hand, let's say the French Gentile or establishment were happy to collaborate with the Germans on the persecution of the Jews, not least because there was a vast program of expropriation. So if you go to the Archives Nationales in Paris, you will find file after file after file of details of the expropriation of Jewish businesses, of their homes, and there was a whole infrastructure of lawyers, civil servants, estate agents, and accountants, and business people, all participating in the theft of other people's property.
Yes.
And so that on the one hand is true, but also on the other hand, the percentage for survival in France of Jews was quite high relative to Holland or Belgium, or further east, Lithuania or Poland. Much higher percentage, and it is this factor of Gentile rescue.
It just me when I think back, there, just can't believe that we in the world, let all that take place like that. And not that we let it just took off and then finally, doing something about it. But it's amazing. Yeah, we definitely need to keep these stories alive so we never have anything like this. Now, let's go back. I want to ask you about the diaries. Whatever become of them? Y'all give them to a museum? Family members keeping it to pass down?
What happened is Ninette let me transcribe them. We would transcribe them together. Mm-hmm. And after she died, Ninette's children let me use them for research purposes, to have them there to refer to, etc. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then once the book was finished, then I gave them back. So they are a family heirloom, and they will be available to Ninette's granddaughter, who is now, in her 20s. And I would hope that they're a memento of a historic document that will stay in the family as long as they wanted.
Yes.
To stay in the family.
Wow. That's just amazing that someone would have gave her a diary, a journal back then and say, you need to be writing about this. You need to keep up, not knowing what it's going to lead to, like I said, the history in the future, but for someone to foresee, you need to be writing this stuff down, take your diary with you and write it.
And these diaries are important as historical documents.
Yes, they are.
Because, in the face of Holocaust denial and people saying these things didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, I hear idiots like that.
And in Ninette's diary, you would find coded references to the fact that her cousins had been arrested and held in. There was a concentration camp just outside central Paris called Drancy, and it was initially manned by French guards. Only midway through the war did German guards take over. And it was originally an internment camp, but it then became the transit camp for the deportation of Jews to Germany. And there in Ninette's diary, written in code, are sentences referring to the fact that her cousins had been arrested.
I could see, and I don't know, I haven't done a lot of research. I wish I would have learned more about this when I was in school. Not that we didn't learn it then, it just I wasn't interested in learning it then. But I wished I would have, back when I was in school, been more into the history of things than today. I'm just want to learn more and more and more. But I could see taking their diaries and just making a book, keep the original and just making copies and just, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that'll be to the family, down to the family.
Yeah. I understand that, yeah.
But what I would say about it is that children learn, when they learn about these terrible events, they tend to learn about numbers. How many people died, camps, and the overall total, and how many were alive beforehand, and it's very much numbers. Yes. And numbers can be numbing. When numbers get really big, they can be numbing. And for me, therefore, the importance of Ninette's diaries and the book is that it tells you about a human being, an individual, her family, what became of her family. So there's a family tree at the back of the book that shows, if you look towards the bottom of the family tree, died in 1943, died in 1943, died in 1944, died in 1944, place of death Auschwitz, place of death Belsen. And you can see in the family tree the disaster that befell French Jews. And it is a very interesting family. Her distant cousin by marriage was Albert Einstein, and indeed her Albert Einstein as a child was a brilliant child violinist, as well as being good at maths and physics.
Yes.
And Edgar, Ninette's father, as a child, would go on holiday with the Einsteins. And he would be paraded in front of the assembled adults, expected to play the violin alongside the young Albert. And, throughout his life, he would tell this humiliating story of how bad a violinist he'd been. The other connection for American readers is that Ninette is a distant cousin of Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Who, Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting connection.
The Elaine dance.
That's right.
The Elaine dance, yeah. Oh, okay, wow. What I was going to say, when you brought up most of the time in school, it's just numbers. And that's probably why I didn't realize it as much, because it may have been later in my 20s when, what's that movie, Schindler's List came out?
That's right.
And I think that is when I started realizing, because now I'm getting to see some actual footage and how bad they were starved to death and things like that, which you don't see that stuff in the books, in school. But like you said, it was mostly just numbers. And maybe that's why I didn't catch the interest.
Yes.
But yeah, later on, when I saw that, that really woke me up and made me realize how bad things really were.
Yes, at one point, my father, as a prisoner of war, was in a town called Frivaldo, through which the Schindler's protected Jews had travelled.
Mm-hmm.
So this is real fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is. Wow, I can listen to a little bit more, but this is. Yeah, I just find it incredible how people were able to survive. Let me ask this question here now. When you were showing some documentation that she hadn't seen, didn't know what was going on about and everything, did she ever go through any photos and find any of her relatives? You know, like I said, they got captured and found that they had been released, or she saw how bad they were and didn't make it, during photos.
Well, one of the things that greatly helped me is that she opened up the family photograph album to me, and we would go through the photographs together, and that would stimulate memories. She also showed me a remarkable photograph when she was just about to leave Cannes, where the family had been for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in hiding because the Germans had arrived in Cannes, and she was told to keep the curtains closed of the house where they were hiding, just for one night before they fled on the train to the Pyrenees. And she could on occasion be quite a naughty girl, and she had her own camera, and she opened the window, and you could see down from where they were onto the beach at Cannes. And the newly arrived German soldiers were exercising their horses in the shallows in front of her. And she was so fascinated by this that she opened the curtains briefly and took a photograph of these horses being exercised in the shallows by the German soldiers, which was extraordinary. And she was ticked off by her parents. But the other... on the subject of photographs, her aunt, Tante Alice, was one of her father's sisters, was deported in the very, very last mass transport out of Paris before the Allies, well, the French initially arrived, and then the rest of the Allies arrived in Paris. And that was on the rest of her family had already been deported, her daughter and her son-in-law, but her granddaughter was in hiding in a Jesuit monastery. Anyway, on the 31st of July 1944, less than 4 weeks before de Gaulle was marching down the Champs-Élysées in a victory parade, the Germans did one last mass transport. There was one other smaller transport later on, but this was the last 1,000 people in cattle trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did is they combed all the old people's homes and that still had Jews in them. They combed the orphanages. So this was the most extraordinary transport.
Yeah.
And of very old people, very elderly people, very ill people, and children. The very last transport. Hundreds of children, hundreds of very old people. And on that transport was Tante Alice. Anyway, Ninette told me that she'd never seen her walk. She was a virtual invalid. And I remember searching through photographs for this very last transport, because there were photographs taken of people getting into these cattle trucks. And there was a picture of a woman basically being stretchered onto the train. I don't know who it was, but it is possible that it was Ninette's Tante Alice.
Wow.
It's extraordinary that the bloodlust was so great, with tanks, General Patton surging through Brittany, after D-Day, and the French armored divisions steaming towards Paris, that such was the bloodlust that they had to do one last mass transport of all these elderly people. These are people in their 70s and tiny wee children. They had to do that one last transport. You know why? I think
Well, it was, you were saying all this, and I'm just thinking in my head, it's like, well, we didn't meet our quota today, so we need to go get anybody and everybody, no matter what shape they're in. We're supposed to get, I don't know, 50,000 today, and we're short. We got to catch our numbers up. It's just what it made it sound like to me.
That's exactly it. But there's a second
there
reason.
You go.
The second reason was, I think, to destroy the evidence. The more
definitely, yeah,
kill, the less you could have people witnessing things. But
yes.
This is more general. In these transports, you got basically 1,000 people onto a train, and they were all categorized as whether they were foreign Jews, whether they were French-born Jews, whether they were married to Gentiles, whether they were half Jewish. But there were times when, if they had 1,000 cattle trucks for 1,000 people and they were a few short, they would go round changing the categories in order to deport other people, and they were called volunteers.
Oh, I can see that too, because again, it goes back to meeting their numbers.
Exactly.
So we got to come up with a new category now. So yeah, these people, they volunteered to come with us. So wow. But John, I appreciate you being here and enjoyed the stories. And put your book up here again. Let me grab it, and you can read the title and everything for us.
Yeah, Ninette's War, a Jewish story of survival in 1940s France.
And written by John Jay. You get this at your Amazon, we know of, and other places probably.
Also, Barnes & Noble are stocking it, and McNally Jackson. So I've been in there at the Rockefeller Center outlet, Rockefeller Plaza outlet for McNally Jackson. They even signed a few copies.
Wow. All right, there you go. So we'll put in the show notes, a list where people can try to get to them. So all right, John, tell people if they want to get hold of your social media, anything else you want to tell them about?
Well, the ways to get hold of the book and learn a bit more about me. Well, first of all, you've got the Amazon.com website, but also the publisher is Pegasus Books. So if you search for Ninette's War and Pegasus Books, you'll find the page there, and you'll find more information and photographs. And also, and it's distributed by Simon & Schuster. So that's the big distributor helping the independent Pegasus distribute the books. And then you will also find my own personal website, which is John J, all one word, johnj.co.uk. And you'll also find me on Instagram.
All right. And again, I'll put in the show notes to make it a little easier for people to find you. John, I appreciate you being here. It's just amazing to me. This is definitely a story of a family perseverance, the will to live and everything, and whatever's in their head, knowing what's going on. But if we're going to survive, we got to go do things we wouldn't normally do. And it's definitely, yeah, overcoming adversity and challenges to persevere. Definitely a story of it.
Very much so, very much so. And it is about resilience and persistence, as you say. And sometimes you might feel very weak and alone, but it's about drawing on those resources. for me, one of the most moving bits of the book is where Ninette's mother and Ninette are crossing the Pyrenees, and Ninette's mother gives up. She sits down and says, I can't go any further.
Yeah.
Leave me here. And Ninette says to her, if you are left here, they'll catch you, but they'll also be more, it'll make it more easy for them to, the border guards to catch us. And as a teenager who'd never said a cross word to her mother ever before, she completely lost her temper and of course managed to gee her mother up and get her off back on her feet and get her marching further through the mud to safety. So arguably she saved her mother's life by...
Well, and as I'm listening to that story, I've had on my shows before at least 3 other women, and they were suicidal. And they looked back, and every one of them told me they looked at their children and said they couldn't go because they want to leave them motherless and wondering, in later in life, why did mother do this? And they said they just couldn't do it. And so in essential, like you just said, their children saved their lives as well. And even though she's never, like you said a crossword to her, she gave what we would call the motivational speech to get her up and going.
That's exactly right, James. Exactly right.
So, all right, John Jay, I appreciate you coming and sharing, and we'll definitely get this up and going and put it in the show notes. Hey, John, we know there's people hurting and struggling today, and if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be a blessing to all of us.
Well, I mean, sometimes people say you make your own luck, and maybe that's a bit harsh, but when you're in adversity, try to draw on your inner resources. We've all got those inner resources to tap into, and sometimes we don't think we have them. Sometimes when faced by the challenge, we really, really struggle. But they are there for oneself and also for the people around one. One draws on those inner resources.
There you go. I'm one of them that believes that we're stronger than what we think. And sometimes we know we're strong, we just forget it. But then when we're put in a situation, we know how to handle it and move on. So yeah, we're a lot stronger than we think. So, all right, John. Hey, thank you for being here, and I appreciate everything and sharing this story, the net story. It's powerful, and I hope we get a bunch of books sold. So,
well, it's been a great pleasure. And if any of your people who listen to your podcast want to get in touch with me to talk further about the book or to share their own stories of survival, then they'll find my email address, and I'd be very, very happy to talk to them.
And again, we'll put this in the old show notes as well. So, all right, John, thank you. Everybody else, hey, be sure to share this with someone else that can use a big perseverance story of not giving up and moving on in life. Hey, I'm Dr. James Perdue, the professor of perseverance. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.